And then I do think a new MTT. I think that scene where they open up and all the battle droids come out
Iconic.
was it was iconic. And I know I said we weren't going to pan the movie too much, but like of all the parts in the movie, that's the one where you're like, oh crap, these guys mean business. Now they very promptly followed it up with Jar Jar Binks,
Ooh, 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 big booba.
and so like it definitely quickly lost.
What do you mean?
I think, anyways, that's another discussion about the movie itself and not necessarily the sets, but like I think those MTTs were just super cool looking. Hello, bricks, chicks, and minifigures. You are listening to AFOLs Welcome, where we talk about all things Lego from the perspective of two adult collectors. We are your co-hosts, West
And Grinch.
And today we're going to be talking Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and the Star Wars Episode 1 Phantom Menace Legos. But before we get into our main topic today, do we have any PSAs? Grinch, I think you have something for everybody.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of let people know the schedule ahead of us. We're going to just be doing a little bit of a Star Wars conversation leading up to May the 4th. So every other week, we'll be talking about a different Star Wars episode leading up to Star Wars Episode 3. And then we'll take a break with Star Wars. There's so much to talk about with Star Wars that, we're kind of going to visit it in waves at certain times. So we're going to start here with the prequels and then go from there.
Yeah, perfect. Like you said, we're going to hit this one in waves because there is just so much to talk about. We were chatting on how we wanted to organize that, and this is, I think, the best way forward. So we're going to give this a go. Next, let's get into some exciting Lego news. So,
exciting Lego news.
For our first topic today, I wanted to bring up something I've been seeing a lot on Instagram, which is people using Lego to recreate scenes from television shows or movies. And the one that I saw recently that kind of highlighted this to me and made me want to share it with everybody was somebody recreated a scene from Ted Lasso season 3. Specifically, it's the scene where Ted's son is getting bullied in Kansas and he's in London and he's upset about it. And so Coach Beard suggests that they could fly home and get there by noon the next day, or Roy Kent alternatively says you should beat him with a rope and do it at 4 a.m. and then laugh. And it's a whole scene. It's very funny. I've seen stuff like Always Sunny in Philadelphia done in Lego. There's been some other ones done in Lego. It cracks me up. It's a lot of fun. I think it's done using generative AI. That's what it seems to appear like. However they're doing it, it's hilarious, and it puts a whole new spin on Lego animation. So
I think they do it in Blender.
What's that?
I think they do it in Blender.
Blender, yeah. But Grinch, what do you have?
The only thing I had for news, because I know you were going to get to some other things, was they announced the Jurassic World sets, the additional sets that they were releasing this year. We have the names now as well as the prices. The first one's Bumpy the Buildable Ankylosaurus. Then we have a T-Rex trailer. And then, more importantly, we have the Stegosaurus Lookout, which means we're getting a Stegosaurus mold, which, as you know, West, was in my top 5 missing dinosaur video. It was the Stegosaurus was in that, which is just like so cool that like now we've gotten 2 out of those 5 that I've like, we need to have these in Lego. So we've got an updated Stegosaurus finally since like 1999 when that original one came out, or 2000. So we're really excited for that. We don't know much about the other information about the sets, and I don't want to speculate too much on it and have anybody upset when that doesn't come to fruition. So that's all we know for right now. and really excited.
Could the Stegosaurus set be one of the first Lost World sets ever to be released?
I was kind of thinking about that because the other set was called the T-Rex trailer, and it could be, the trailer and the T-Rex scene from the Lost World.
Yeah,
But we don't know. It's hard to tell with these because they're typically announced under the Jurassic World theme, and then they might have a Jurassic Park sub theme. At least that's how
yeah.
Brickset has it separated. Is like it's the Jurassic World theme, and then Jurassic Park is within that theme. So it could be, but we just don't know. The one with Bumpy too, who's the Ankylosaurus from Camp Cretaceous. Um, it's called Bumpy the Buildable Ankylosaurus for $25. So that one just seems like, is it a 4+ set? The price point seems too low on it. I'm kind of envisioning like what they did with that T-Rex skull earlier this year, but even that was
Yeah.
like more expensive. So I'm not quite sure what that one is yet.
I bet you could make something, look pretty good with that.
Yeah.
But if you had around 200 to 300 pieces, I bet you could do something. It wouldn't be big, but I could see like T-Rex breakout kind of something sized around that way.
Yeah, just like a separate Ankylosaurus. Yeah.
It
We'll
does seem
see.
interesting.
I'm excited.
That they're engaging in Camp Cretaceous. I think it's
Crustacean. That's the one where they eat all the shrimp, right?
That's a different camp.
That's the Red Lobster theme.
It's an adults only camp. Anyway,
I won't elaborate.
moving on.
That's for the listener's imagination to elaborate on.
Camp Cretaceous was a show that appeared on Netflix, and both you watched it and I watched it. Just more out of curiosity.
I think I told you, I was like, you got to watch this, dude. Like, just get over the fact that it's like meant for kids and just enjoy it for what it is. And it's actually really good. And it got a little off the rails. Like the first season the first season was okay, but the second season got like way better. And then the third season took this huge dip. And then the fourth season just kind of continued with that. But that's okay. We don't talk about that.
It was something, and it in the absence of any other Jurassic World, Jurassic Park content, which I feel like a TV show could do pretty good, with Jurassic World. Camp Cretaceous.
Crustacean.
Camp Crustacean. Camp Cretaceous was, it was something. It fed, no pun intended, Jurassic World IP hunger. I don't know if it was as meaningful as Lego seems to think it was, but
it actually was pretty. Like, I think the listeners can tell I'm the bigger Jurassic World fan here, and it still gets talked about today on like the subreddit. They're continuing to make content around it. Just did like they just had a trailer release for like another kind of sub animated like post Camp Cretaceous thing with Darius. I haven't watched it yet. It's on my to watch list. I've just been too busy. I'm honestly blanking on the name. So it has had a pretty big impact, and they even tied it into the bigger world.
I think too.
What was that?
Maybe it's a generational thing. It just didn't quite. It maybe certainly geared towards a younger audience. So.
All I'm gonna say is I want a poster. They have a poster of the little kitten that's holding onto like the rope, and it's like hang in there. In the show, they have one with an Ankylosaurus holding onto a rope, and it says like hang in there. And I'm gonna find that poster, and if somebody's listening knows where I can get it, drop a link in the comments, please. That would be awesome.
Yeah. So let's wrap up our Lego news. I have two other things I wanted to chat on very briefly. It was kind of a slow week for Lego news in all, but I think we're gearing up for a lot more public releases leaks here shortly as May 1st rolls around. So we did get information on the new CMF series, CMF 26, which is all space related. I think it's a really interesting idea for Lego to kind of take a CMF and give it a stronger theme. I think looking back, it would be interesting to see, the CMFs, they've generally, as they've progressed, had not so much a theme, although certainly there have been themed CMFs, and there have been licensed CMFs. But if you look at them across the board, there's usually like a sports figure, usually some sort of medieval knight, or there's like these
Usually a
boxes.
space figure.
A space figure. There's a animal related one. There's a maybe just a regular adult related one. There's a kid in a costume, right? So there's always these interesting connections to the CMF series, but this is one of, I think, the first ones that Lego has done that has not been a licensed CMF, where the entire CMF itself is just a theme. I'm sure somebody can correct me. I know they've done the sports ones and stuff like that, the Olympic ones, but I'm going to call this like an indigenous Lego theme CMF. And so what's really fun with this one is they are revisiting some of their older themes with Space Police, Blacktron, the Ice Planet theme, and they've updated them. So
Which
I'm
they've
excited for those.
done in the CMF. That's where
Yes, yeah. I don't think ever this explicitly though.
Correct.
It's usually been like allusion to.
well, they have like a
But
classic
here-
space shirt under the rocket costume, right?
Here it's like literally it's an Ice Planet figure. Literally it's a Blacktron and Space Police figure. So I think that's really exciting to see. I'm excited to get my hands on some of them. I don't know if I'm going to get all of them or if I need to get all of them, frankly. But
Yeah.
they're exciting. It'll be kind of interesting to see. I've heard there's a trick now with the QR codes on the boxes
Yeah.
to tell which one which.
Yep.
So
you need the app.
that's exciting too. Although I like the trick of bringing in a scale because I think that's pretty clever.
I will say. So I've done that. And there's two things you need to keep in mind if you're bringing in a scale to measure these. And maybe we need to do a CMF talk and we can revisit this there.
Oh yeah.
But with the scale, it needs to go to the 0.03 decimal.
So
it needs to go to the thousands, correct? Which mine did not. And then I got in, and it was like, 0.17. I'm like, well, crap. This one's 0.176, and this one's 0.178. Like,
they're all 0.1.
which is like half of them are 0.17. And then if you do have a scale that goes to the thousands, it's not a surefire method. It'll get you close. But if there's a little bit more glue that's placed on the box in the manufacturing process, because you're at the thousands, literally that much glue can throw off the measurement completely. So sometimes, the glue is a little heavier, maybe at a certain factory or a certain production run, etc. It's not going to throw everything off. It's kind of more of a one-off thing, but sometimes you will buy it and be like, well, crap, like this one, because it is 0.176 versus 0.178, and when it's that close, you're measuring it, and then you got a 0.177, and you're like,
You don't know which column to put it in.
Right.
I understand Lego's intent of going to the boxes. I know there's been a lot of commentary on that. I applaud Lego for trying to continue to find ways where, and maybe people might say it's fairly meaningless in that your entire business is based around plastic. Fair, but I think Lego's kind of thought process is every little bit counts, and so finding ways to reduce the use of plastics for plastics especially that are going to get thrown away, or maybe not recycled. It's hard to recycle that type of plastic that are in the packages. So I applaud them for seeking these new, the paper bags, the boxes, because I think that definitely makes sense. There was something nostalgic about the trick of like feeling for the CMFs, and once you kind of got a handle for that and you got good with it, I think that was kind of a fun thing to do, just to go to. It was sort of exciting to like you're like, oh no, I know which one this is, and identify them in that way. So that was kind of a fun trick and technique. I know you and I both have our fair share of experience with that.
Well,
So
why don't we save that for our CMF topic
absolutely. So
conversation? I did want to go back to these real quick.
sure.
Like you said, I'm not very excited about them. They're okay. There's some that I'm like, this is actually pretty cool. But I used to collect these, like I had almost every single series, and I had to end up not. And we'll talk about this more later. But I had to essentially I sold the collection because it literally took up half my display space. Was just the CMF minifigures because there's just so many. I mean, there's like 3 or 4 a year, and we in every series you do get the just token space kind of themed minifigure, right? There's like a fantasy themed, a space mini, and to me this is just kind of like that, but in a wave. The Ice Planet guy's pretty cool. The ones that I will personally seek out are the ones with the nano minifigure, the little nano alien, because I collect the nano figures. And then there's the cyborg French bulldog, which is kind of funny. So I'll get that one too, just because again that minifigure feels like a minifigure we've gotten 2 or 3 times. But that cyborg French bulldog, I collect dogs, so like I want that one too. And then of course I want the classic space baby because I collect the classic space figures. But the like minifigure I'm most excited about outside of that sort of kind of those for those reasons is the one with the Orion shield. I don't know the name. I don't think we've seen the names yet, but there's one. He's got translucent purple legs with some kind of armor, like printing armor on them. Translucent purple arms. Excuse me. Translucent purple hair and head, and then a translucent purple baton. And then he's holding a shield that is a translucent purple shield, like it's the Gungan shield from Star Wars Episode 1, which we're about to talk about, with a printing of the constellation of Orion on it. And that's just a awesome minifigure in general. So I think that's the one where I'm like, ooh, I want that one.
That is definitely cool. And I think it's interesting because I know there's been a lot of commentary on like Force Ghosts in Lego and why have we not got Lego Force Ghosts, and they talked about the challenges of the production process with translucent figures. But I mean, here's a figure that's almost entirely translucent.
I think it's time, Lego. I think it's time.
I think they're getting there, guys. So I think we're gonna get that one figured out.
Lego's just saving that for a rainy day. I feel like they do that with a lot of things, like Zelda, Mario minifigures, for example. They're just milking milking the other stuff out, and then they'll be like, 50th anniversary of Star Wars, let's go. And everyone will be like, this is amazing.
Dang it. So let's chat real quick. The last one I just wanted to touch on was that May 1st is rolling up here shortly, and we're expecting to see quite a few, specifically Star Wars sets coming out in time for May the 1st or May the 4th. The ones of note that are on theme with our discussion today are we are expecting a new battle droid carrier and a new Sith infiltrator. So that'll be exciting to see. We'll talk about both of those here briefly when we talk about the episode 1 breakdowns. But it's exciting to see those come out. But we haven't received any. There's no pictures, no leaks or anything yet. So like I said,
there was of the infiltrator.
Was there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there sure was.
Maybe there was a battle droid carrier leak too, but we'll get to those in a bit. I guess it'll be great to see official pictures, and I'm excited to kind of see what Lego's put together because these sets are nostalgic for us, and I don't think you or I ever had a Sith infiltrator, but
no, we did. I had the original one. We'll talk about it. We're going to talk about it.
Okay.
I still have it.
Yeah.
I actually. So yeah, well, I'll talk about it later.
Yeah, let's get over to our main theme today.
Today's topic.
So, like Grinch said, ground rules for the theme and the main topic here are that we're talking about Lego Star Wars Episode 1. And when we broke that down, we both recognized that this theme was incredibly huge. And so we were trying to think of the best ways to discuss Lego Star Wars, and we kind of went back and forth on a few different options. I don't think every movie is going to get its own video or own episode for us. For example, the prequels don't have a lot of sets, so I think we could probably tackle all, or the sequels rather. I think we could tackle all of those together. Rogue One might have its own standalone episode, but Han Solo might get lumped in, or the Solo movie might get lumped in with some of the Disney Plus stuff. So we'll kind of see. We'll certainly set those ground rules when we start. But I just wanted to kind of set expectations before we get into the discussion. But I did want to start our ultimate discussion here with why is it important to start with Star Wars Episode 1?
Because it's the best movie.
Everyone just stopped watching. They're like, I'm done.
Just turned it off.
Yeah. It's not because it's the first movie. It's certainly not because it's the best movie. But I think it's important in the context of Lego itself and Lego Star Wars to talk about Episode 1 first, because Lego Star Wars Episode 1 released around the same time as the rest of the theme, but released in 1999, which was when Lego Star Wars first released. So Lego Star Wars and the Phantom Menace series of sets are some of the original Lego Star Wars sets that you could have gotten. They released in line with the movie.
Phantom Menace is why Lego got the Star Wars license in the first place.
Exactly. I was just about to say that. So same mind right here. That was exactly right. So it was one of Lego's first major license releases. I'm sure they were working on other ones, but this was the first one that came out, I think, in our time, and especially Grinchy. I think you said it last episode that they'd done some small themed and licensed releases with like Shell for gasoline, and they would do some car stuff every once in a while, but very rare. Certainly not like Speed Champions, but there weren't really major licensed themes up until this point. And now, when we got Lego Star Wars, that was a huge turning point, especially for us. I was 9 at the time. Grinch, you were a few years younger.
6.
But we were definitely in our adolescent and kind of peak Lego impressionable years. And so to be getting Star Wars for the first time, we had both revisited the original trilogy at that point, or saw the original trilogy. So we were very excited about that, very excited about the new movies, and Lego coming out with Star Wars, which was already something we loved, just really complemented this fandom that we already had.
Yeah, and I will, to add to that, Lego Star Wars came out in 1999. There were 13 original sets that came out that year for Lego Star Wars. 8 of the 13 were Phantom Menace. There were 5 original trilogy sets that were released at the same time, but the Phantom Menace dominated that initial wave. It dominated kind of the excitement, of course, until the movie came out. Then everybody famously knows what happened with the $2 billion marketing that happened during that time, where all of a sudden nobody could sell these sets. It was like they were sold out, and then the movie came out, and then it was literally nobody even wanted to look at them or touch them, except for us, because we were kids, and I loved that movie. But that's okay.
It's funny too, because we'll talk more about Episode 1. I'm gonna do my best not to critique Episode 1 in this episode. There might be a little critique here and there, but
Episode 1 truthers, I'll represent. We got this.
What I will say though is, and I think, and I don't have anything in front of me to back up this claim, but I will preface this with, it is my impression that Lego Star Wars is Lego's best-selling theme. And
yeah, it's constantly on. They have annually they'll have like a little review of their most popular theme that year, and Star Wars is almost always top number 1, if not it's top 3. City's always up there too. Sometimes Friends, I think, just cracked it for the first time a few years ago, but it's always Star Wars.
And Lego doesn't ever really publicly share those figures, so it's definitely tough. But you can tell just by engaging with the larger Lego, especially the AFOL community, that Star Wars has a special place in everyone's hearts.
There are
There's
over 1,000 unique Star Wars minifigures.
I think again another reason why we had to really take this theme down into like bite-sized chunks.
As of today,
But
it's 1,384 unique minifigures for
oh my
Star
gosh,
Wars alone.
that's insane.
No
I mean,
theme comes even close to that. I mean, if you think of like, okay, what are the other big themes? Like superheroes. If you count DC and Marvel all in one, it's 900, but that's across 2 licenses, right? This is one. If you look at Harry Potter is way less as well. I think it's like 500 something. Yeah, 516 minifigures. So a third of Lego Star. I mean, this is how dominant Lego Star Wars is.
yeah, it's just insane. It really is. So, Grinch, am I missing anything on why it's important to start with episode 1? I think I covered that pretty well, but do you have anything you want to kind of hit on before we?
I think as long as the listeners understand that we're covering episode 1 first because it's the best movie, then they should be. They get it. They're right there with us. So I think.
Okay.
I think
yeah,
we yeah.
we made that point.
I will say
Um,
Lego City does have 2,000 unique minifigures, but that's Lego
Fair.
City. So
Yeah. Let's talk about this series in general then. By my count, I'm showing 48 total sets, 43 system play sets, 2 UCS sets, 3 Technic sets, and in those system sets, I'm including polybags and a San Diego Comic-Con set. So if you go onto the Wiki Fandom page, I think it said something to the effect of 20 sets. I definitely counted way more than that, so I'm not sure where that number came from, but quite a few. Right, I have a figure of what percentage of the total Star Wars sets that is, but it doesn't surprise me that in the original wave that came out, which also, sorry to revisit that comment, right? Lego is celebrating this year 25 years of Lego Star Wars. Well, it's also the 25th anniversary of Phantom Menace. So, if you hadn't put that together already, there's a lot here, right? And it has definitely, at least initially, it took up a large chunk of the sets that Lego was producing. I think more recently we're seeing less and less Phantom Menace sets. I think for multiple reasons that we're going to discuss today. From a theme perspective, right, the original wave came out in 1999 to 2000. There was a refresh in 2007, a refresh in the 2011, 2012 years, a 2015 refresh, which was interesting, only a few years later. And then since 2015, we've kind of gotten a slow trickle of episode 1 sets. This year, 2024, marking probably one of the largest release waves of episode 1 sets we can expect here in the, in the, for the time being. So, and it's fascinating to see what's been produced. So I'm going to just kind of go through our data set for this episode, not to talk necessarily the data yet, but really more to just talk about kind of what has been produced, right? So we've seen lightsaber duels, we've seen the droid fighters, some Gungan and Naboo swamp stuff. We've seen flash speeders, battle droid carriers, pod racers, Naboo fighters, some more Trade Federation equipment like the AATs and the MTTs, Gungan sub and Sith infiltrator, and that's kind of it. Interestingly enough, there's variations on all of these, but if you think about the movie itself, a lot of those sets just cover the movie. And so from there on out, when we've gotten new sets, we're getting variations on something that's already sort of been released. It's very rare to get like a new episode 1 set that's unique in that capacity. So in some of the refreshes and revisits, we've gotten one of the new ones was the Republic Cruiser. That was the ship that Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon flew in on in the beginning that very quickly blew up. But we've gotten, different variations on that. But like I said, really, those are the main themes, the main sets in the theme. So, Grinch, from those sets, what really stands out for you? What are the ones that I think you really really big. I guess, and actually, let's table that discussion real quick. Tell me more about what this theme means to you personally.
Well, it's the best Star Wars episode, and it's also the best. Okay, I'll stop the bit. Um, I'm not an episode one hater, where some people will shy away from it because it's not the best movie. I'll lean in with it. I think I've come full circle on it as being a Reddit prequel meme fan. And if you enjoy it for what it is and don't take it too seriously, it's not that bad. I There's some aspects of it that I really do like. I mean, for example, I'd already seen the original trilogy before I saw episode one, even though I was 6 at the time when this came out. And then I saw episode one, and like that movie was what made me want a giant, Lego battle, right? Like this is the trilogy that made me want battle packs because I mean, yeah, you had that in the original trilogy, but you didn't have that epic wide scale battle. They were more space focused battles. You had Hoth, I know you had the Battle of Endor, but like it was episode one where you really had these large, like multi-planet scale battles that like the universe felt so much bigger after the prequels, right? Like they went from, typically in the original trilogy, it's like they go from one planet to another, and that's it. Like it's like there's 2 or 3 planets that they go to, and you're kind of like, ooh, cool, this is a new planet. This one's snowy. This one's foresty, and this one they went like all over the place, and the scale's just so much bigger, and it really feels like this is what expanded the Star Wars universe for me, anyways. I think I don't get that necessarily in the sets, right? Like it took 17 years to come out with the Republic transport, the cruiser, right? Or sorry, I guess it took them almost 10 years since the movie came out. But looking at the collectability of these sets, that's one of the more collectible sets. We had the initial wave of all of these. I know you're gonna talk about the data more, but I think it kind of goes to show like how kind of crappy these sets were received if you look at the retail price and then the price used. So like, for example, the Droid Fighter set was $6 at retail. The value used is less than $10. So the set itself doesn't have much value. But if you go to a brand new in-box set, it's like $50. But that's just because it's way more rare to find it in a box, not necessarily because it's a desirable set. Whereas like Ninjago City, for example, which is rare to find in a box these days, but also a really desirable set, that set itself is worth $1,000 used, let alone in box, right? And so these ones just like the set itself is not worth anything. It's only rare because it's still in that box, right?
And it's been in a box for 25 years,
right?
And I think that's certainly something to keep in mind when we look at some of the prices. We're going to explore some of the prices new. I didn't pull used prices. That's a really interesting topic. Man, I wish we're going to have to start including that in some of the data sets, because that's, I think, a really interesting discussion of value there, of adding another layer of context. And so,
like Anakin's Pod Racer, $15 retail, less than $25 used, but the new one is $100 in box. And it's like, okay, just inflation alone, you're actually that this set is cheaper used than was when it first came out new. Because this has been 25 years now. But it's just rare because it's still in the box, right? And part of this too is because they have yellow heads, which this was kind of that. For me, that's really nostalgic seeing Star Wars minifigures in their yellow heads, but it's not collectible necessarily. And I that's one I don't understand why. Like, to me, it's unique, it's rare, like that. Like as a collector, I'm like, okay, unique, rare, different, awesome. Like that's my thought process. But in this case, it's like, no, just unique, different because it's crappy, not rare.
I think those theories too, right? Like even when they went to the original flesh tone faces, they were very basic faces. And so I think for Star Wars, in that original like collection, I think had Lego been putting at the time more detail into their, I mean, even in the cities figures at those ages, I mean, remember, like we looked at the Western theme a little bit, and they were other than the bad guys who for some reason had really ugly faces, like the regular minifigures had very bland vanilla faces across
Yeah.
the series. It's not like today's regular minifigures, yellow flesh toned the yellow minifigures where they have just a huge variety of faces and facial expressions and all sorts of stuff going on. They just didn't have that in the old ones, and so I can kind of understand why for some people it's not as nostalgic as maybe like you and I might think, because for us that was the original Lego Star
Hmm.
Wars.
So, you asked my kind of thoughts on this, wave as a whole, or this sub series as a whole. And one
Yeah,
thing I've really noticed is that there's a lack of play sets. And like traditionally with Lego, they always focus on vehicles, right? Or more
yeah,
so until you're into like the Friends line, for example, or, half a city is vehicle based, half of it's building based. But there seems to be a incredible lack of play sets here. And I think that's a big opportunity. Like the
yeah,
Palace at Theed is like a beautiful set, right? Or just, set from the movie, I mean, not Lego set, because it's not a Lego set.
sure.
And I would love to see, more of that from this theme.
So hold on to that thought, because that is a question I want us to discuss here at the end. But I think that's a really great point. And by play sets, I think there are play scale vehicles, right? So it's
Hmm.
not the Sith Infiltrator is not to scale. The um, Gungan Sub is not necessarily to scale. So they're play scale vehicles, but they are not. There's no environments. There's no built up
Right.
environments. There's no action features like somebody falling. I mean, we did get one at kind of back in 2017 with the Final Duel set.
Great set.
Um, yeah, and I mean, certainly of any part of this movie that I think lives on rent free for everybody, it's not only the music, right? Not the duel, but like the music. Like, yeah. And so I think it is a great set, and you can see a lot of the details that they put into that. I don't know if we necessarily need to get that level of detail, and that was certainly more of like a focused more on for adults set, but I could definitely see some other, like I said, some built up terrain, those kind of things for some of these sets. So,
Yeah. A couple
but
things
let's,
I wanted to note real quick too.
yeah, go
Yeah,
for it.
we had almost this whole first wave that came out, right? We had the lightsaber duel, we had the droid fighter, we had the Gungan patrol. We didn't have Naboo Swamp, but our friend did, and I have it now. We had the battle droid carrier, we had Anakin's pod racer, we had Naboo starfighter, we had Sith infiltrator, we had AT-AT. We did not have the Gungan sub or the Mos Espa pod race or the MTT. I
Yeah,
remember famously I chose the Lego soccer set over the MPT, and you got mad at me for doing that. Um, One of our original brotherly spats from back in the day. So I was a big soccer fan, so I wanted the soccer set. Um, but I
understandable.
just remember with the Sith Infiltrator, and it's kind of funny looking at this in retrospective because there's been a lot of Sith infiltrators.
Yeah,
It's kind of the Luke Landspeeder of this episode, right? I mean, there was one in '99, then there was one again in I think 2011, 2007, and then I think there was one more too, right? 2015. Sorry, not 2007. 2015. So we've got three, and we're getting another one again, right? Of the items of the vehicles from this, that is the most done vehicle by far. And we had the first one. I think it was technically my set. I still have it. And I just remember that thing falling apart like there was no tomorrow. I mean, you picked it up and the front would fall off. Then you'd hold it by the middle and one of the wings would fall off. And then you'd hold it by, two hands on it. And then like the landing gear would fall off when you tried to, it just was not playable. And it was a really frustrating set. And it actually kind of taught me a lot about like stabilizing your build because like you had to fix it somehow. Otherwise it would just split on you. And you can kind of see it in the rating. I guess it's got like a 3.5 on Brickset. But it was still a cool set. I'm excited to now that they're coming out with the new one, I'm going to bring this one back out, have it built, and have them displayed next to each other. I like to do that with the anniversary ones because it just, for me, I don't really collect Star Wars anymore, but like when we get the anniversary waves, I'll collect those and then display it next to the sets that I played with as a kid. And like that kind of fits that need for me. But yeah, overall, this first wave was pretty cool. I do want to add the other thing that the first wave, that original 99 wave reminds me of, and we didn't really mention it in our little intro, was the old gray, light gray, and the old dark gray.
Yeah.
And if you ever wondered or questioned why Lego changed, just look at the original Infiltrator versus like the remakes. And you got to look at them in person too, because it's really obvious.
The Infiltrator from this era is Star Wars' blue era, and I don't for the life can't understand why someone at Lego was like, oh yeah, let's put a bunch of blue in there. Like that makes sense. And I think it's very nostalgic. I think I had
what West is talking about, for those that don't know, is that the accent color, the colors were gray. It was light gray and dark gray. And then the accent colors for all the Sith vehicles and even the Empire vehicles, the TIE fighters, was blue. Yeah. Everything had a blue tint to it for some reason. And even I think, and I think it's because the Rebellion had a little bit of a red tint on like the X-Wing and stuff like that, but that was really just the X-Wing. So I don't know why they did blue.
It's fascinating, and it's certainly one of those things that is like a hallmark of the Lego era, right? And so the blue in those vehicles was just such a like interesting feature, and I don't know, like I think it adds to the nostalgia a little bit. I don't think it makes them any better. Like the ones with like the all gray versions and black versions look a lot better, but it's also funny too if you look at like the older Simp Infiltrator versus like some of the newer ones, and just how it makes you appreciate how far Lego Star Wars and just Lego building in general has come along in the last 25 years. I mean, this is very two-dimensional and blocky. I'm referencing the original Synth Infiltrator. You can see that it's really built along an X and Y axis, not a lot of like studs on the side building. There was a little bit. There were some new hinge pieces that were introduced at the time that really made a difference, but
the clicking hinges,
techniques and stuff. It's just a very basic build, and it's nothing really stands out on it. And if you compare that to even just the next one that came out in 07, like it just really is like a night and day difference between the two. You can see the 07 build's a lot smaller. It has a lot more of the shaped pieces. It still doesn't look great, interestingly enough, but it does kind of look a little more fearsome. And but then when you get into like the one from, I believe, 2011, you're getting a lot more of the rounded pieces. The hinge pieces make a return with the wings, but then you have like an entire hinged front end assembly that just looks a lot nicer. There's landing gear that looks a lot more official, flick fire missiles on it and stuff. Like it really kind of took a turn. So I'm excited to see in more detail what the latest one looks like, because I think that'll be really fun to see, again, just how far Lego Star Wars has come from the earlier days.
One thing I wanted to add before we kind of move on from like that original 99 wave and, early 2000s was the instructions of this era had on every single page, they had just a little window at the very top. I mean, it was not even an inch long window. It was like a half inch by like a quarter inch little scene. And every page on the instruction would advance the scene from whatever the set was from. So for example, the Gungan Patrol, opened up on the fields of Theed, and then you'd go on, and then there'd be the shield generator. It just kind of played out the movie scenes frame by frame as you built the set. And that's just to me like pure nostalgia from my childhood of building Lego, was like having those those scenes kind of unfold as you build the set, and I always thought it was a nice touch. You know, nowadays they just don't do that sort of stuff with the instructions anymore. I mean, they just kind of got rid of even having like box art on the instructions. And
this was also the era when the instructions had alternate instructions
Yes.
on the back, and they wouldn't show you what to build.
it wasn't really
They would
alternate instructions. It was just the alternate builds that you could do. Yeah.
And it was funny because like they would have nothing to do with Star Wars.
Oh yeah, it'd be like turn the infiltrator into a mech, or like turn it into this flying saucer thing, and you're like, okay, why would I do that?
I think it was an interesting time though, where Lego was not as concerned with making things correct with respect to the IP, and they were more just like, hey, if you want to build something different with this, here's some ideas.
Yeah.
And I think there's something kind of pure about that I appreciate. I mean, they were silly, and I don't think I ever did, but
I think with the Gungan Patrol, you could build like a snail or something random. It was like it was Creator 3-in-1 before Creator 3-in-1 was a thing.
Yeah,
except for they didn't give you the instructions; they just showed you the image. So if you actually wanted to build it, it was way too complicated for a 6-year-old. It was more to like encourage provocative thought of like, what else can I build with this?
So let's chat more. I know we wanted to kind of, or Grinch, you were chatting more about like the waves themselves. Is there anything from some of the refresh waves that you want to speak to or highlight in particular? As like, I already highlighted the Republic cruiser as sort of like a interesting addition to the canon, if you will, of this theme, or you know, the entry into the theme that's very unique and had not been done before. But does anything really stand out for you in terms of, in any of the waves, something unique or different that has not been done?
You know, the Naboo Starfighter is the second kind of most popular ship from this outside of the Infiltrator. I'd say it might be even more popular as a ship. It's just not been redone as much, which is kind of interesting. I mean, it is kind of one of the main ships. The other thing I'd say is the initial wave of this, and I guess I'm classifying the initial wave as 99 to like 2001 or 2002.
Yeah.
Like that was, you know, when this was at its adolescence. It was before Episode 2 came out, so I'm kind of counting that as all the initial wave. It had like 4 pod racing sets in it, and we've had like 2 sets. So from being almost, you know, a quarter of, or a little bit more than a quarter of the initial sets released were pod race based, barely touched sense. And it might be because that didn't age well, or it might be because that was, you know, a third of the movie was the pod race, and that kind of upset people, or whatever people were upset about. Lego just hasn't really kind of gone down that, you know, and I think it's a shame. There were so many kind of unique pod racers. And they had a lot of those captured initially, but since then they've redone Sebulba once and Anakin's pod racer twice, not counting polybags. What about you?
I think that is a shame, because I think there's definitely some interesting, you know, you could almost even just make stuff up. You know what I mean? Like make up pod racers. And it's not like they haven't made up Lego Star Wars sets in the past, right? They did this speeder. Like that was pulled from a Kenner toy, and Kenner toys famously like kind of went off script with Star Wars stuff. And so I don't see anything wrong with them, like, you know, inventing pod racers or exploring different themes like that. They could even make it almost a sub theme of Lego Star Wars, is just like different pod racers that I think would very much fit within sort of the theme and brand of everything. But I do think there was definitely some fatigue with the movie that just sort of wore everybody out.
Yeah.
And like, I know a lot of adult Star Wars fans at the moment don't necessarily look back at pod racing as fondly as I think others of us do. I mean, it was basically like the NASCAR of Star Wars, right? So like,
yee!
If you like racing, I think pod racing is exciting. But if that's just not your jam, then I think for a lot of fans, it kind of fell flat and felt like it was way overplayed in the movie.
Well,
I don't know.
I've been surprised too. Well, okay, so 2 things. You were saying like Lego encouraged building before, right, with the alternate instructions or alternate builds. That was one thing that they did here. Was they had it was it was like a creator bucket that you have now, where it's just bricks and pieces. But they had that
Yeah.
for, it was called the pod racing bucket, and you could build like a suggestion of 3 different pod racer kind of chassis and engines. And
Yeah.
the whole idea was you built your own pod racer. So like they kind of did that back in 99 2000, but like they don't really, haven't really touched that since, right? They kind of have moved on from like they've kind of gone to more like, well, in order for this to sell, it has to be more accurate or based on something. It can't necessarily
Yeah.
just be an original, like create your own pod racer.
I could totally see someone taking like the Y-wing engines and turning those into a pod racer or something like that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like I think that would be very doable for Lego. You already have the designs created, the clear Technic pieces for the chassis, to hold everything up. I think really makes a huge difference. We both really enjoyed the 20th anniversary set.
Chef's
I don't know if
kiss.
it certainly is, I think, like the highest form of that type of set, like that you could probably ever achieve at this point. It's really just, which really, if you go back to it, is just a variation of the 2007 set,
Right.
which they'd already done with.
2011.
Yes, sorry, the 2011 pod racing refresh set, where they did do the clear pieces, and then they gave you the handle to hold it,
Mm-hmm.
which I think just really is, from a play feature perspective, makes the set really unique and nice, all around the board, like very complete. So
I do think
yeah, I think.
there is
Oh, sorry.
appetite for this, and that was going to be my second point. Was I've been surprised about, they had the Mos Espa diagram set was leaked, right? And we got some images of it. And I've been really surprised about,
Okay.
I just read through the Reddit comments to get a good, I know Reddit's the Wild West, but I just read through the comments to get a general like idea of like what people are thinking about the set. It's not definitive by any means, but I've been really surprised about the number of people that have been like, I am like, Lego, take my money. I am so excited about this. It's about time. Like, oh, this is going to be a beautiful set. Like, this is so exciting. And I was kind of like, oh, I thought that maybe episode 1 is now to a point where it's,
Yeah.
again, like with my journey with it. If I went from enjoying it as a child to being like, oh, this is cringy, to being like, no, I love this. It's poetic. Whatever. It tells a good story. It's way better than anything else we've got. Like, this isn't as bad as other stuff, and I'm all for it. It's funny because nowadays people complain about how there's like maybe not enough exposition in Star Wars. It's a little bit just like, hey, let's go from point A to point B. But like back then, the complaint was, oh my God, we spent 30 minutes at the Senate, like having them debate. And I'm like, nowadays, I'm like, yeah, no, but what are we going to do about these taxes in the in Naboo? I mean, like, that's not fair. This is taxation without representation. I get all into it, and maybe it's just because I'm an adult now, but it is kind. I do think there's a lot of appetite now for episode
Yeah.
1 sets specifically.
Yeah, no, that's fair, and I think there's definitely some nostalgia there. So I want to just kind of chat now on some data, just to go over some data real quick before we kind of not wrap up, but get to kind of the endish of our conversation. So, like we talked about, there's over 48 sets in this series, or ranging anywhere from the actual system sets to the Technic sets. Of the system sets, interestingly enough, Grinch, which one do you think saw the highest rate of, I would say, maybe rate of appreciation or increase in value?
I might be wrong because it's if we're going off just percentage, but if we're going off total value, which I still don't understand how this set is worth that much, because it's literally just, I think the only exclusive piece is the print or the UCS sticker on it. But isn't the Darth Maul like insanely expensive now for like just a crappy? I mean, like the Black Panther bust historically did terrible, and this Darth Maul bust is now like $3,000 or something ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, we're referencing new numbers. So the 2001 Darth Maul bust retailed for $150 and is now, according to Brick Economy, on sale for $3,300, seeing about a 2,000% rate of increase. Interestingly enough, though, of those two, which I include those two as our two UCS sets from this movie, the one that has an even larger rate of increase is actually the chromed Naboo Starfighter. So that one only retails for $40, but now to buy it new, you're looking at spending almost just a little over $2,000. So it's had about a 5,000% increase in value since it came out in 2002. And that was back when Lego did do more of those chrome pieces. Since then, all of their Naboo Starfighters have been made with gray, which I think is understandable. I do think maybe drum lacquered silver could be an interesting addition. I'm now kind of scheming what that would have looked like. What was the Marvel set figure that had a lot of drum lacquered silver in it?
The Black Panther bust.
Okay. Maybe it was the telescope then, because I was thinking there was one of the figures, the helmets or busts that had, but I think it was Thanos had gold, didn't he? Or it was the gauntlet
Yeah,
that had.
it has gold. There was the nano gauntlet that had a little silver in it.
I'm wondering if there's enough drum lacquered silver in circulation with like the newest Naboo Starfighter, if you could like replace the pieces. I bet that would look really good. That would be kind of fun to play around with.
Potentially,
But anyway, yeah, neither here nor there. Of kind of the main sets, though, outside of the UCS sets and the specialized sets, interestingly enough, one of the best performing sets is either the original Battle Droid carrier or the original lightsaber dual set, both of which were either $10 or less. So kind of funny to see how those two sets have retailed or have gained the most value. Grinch, I know you had a couple of the Battle Droid carriers from 2001. I think we at least had one of them, and like you said, we definitely had the lightsaber dual set. So it's a shame we just didn't keep them boxed up, or for $6.
Go tell 6-year-old Grinch that, and I'm sure he'll listen.
So, but yeah, a pretty incredible increase in price. Now, in box today, $105 for the lightsaber duel, and for the Battle Droid carrier, $177. So it's not like it's huge, but a pretty sizable return on investment, if you will. But other than that, things are pretty standard for value. Like you mentioned, they're not overly valued or overly hyped. Part per pieces, pretty much where we'd expect, anywhere from 8 to 13, 14. So pretty good value, price per piece. Pretty average on minifigures. The ones that really stand out with respect to minifigures are like the MTTs, where they had the second last one in 2007 had 21 battle droids in it, or 21 figures, which is pretty insane. But they're battle droids, so nothing like over the top there. And then in terms of prices, this was back in the era when you did have $6 Lego sets, $10 Lego sets. The original wave, the Mos Espa Pod Race went for $90. That was the most expensive set. Now we're seeing, I suppose, the Darth Maul bust, technically, if you include that in the original wave, but we're seeing more sets. What's also interesting was there's 3 Technic sets in this series: the Pit Droid, Battle Droid, and Destroyer Droid. So all of them were droids, and one of the unique things, and we had the Battle Droid, was that they folded up. And so like the Pit Droid could compress, and you could press his top and he'd pop open. The Battle Droid could unfold, and then I believe
the Destroyer, and grab the gun off the back and then stand up, and
and that was a really cool feature. There was some rubber bands involved. They looked really good, actually. They used some of the Throwbot and Bionicle pieces that were really starting to emerge at that time too. And so I remember really enjoying the Battle Droid and kind of enjoying the play features and the way that they looked. I think I even upgraded mine so that he had like a sniper rifle, like it from Battlefront, versus like the little blaster thing that he came with. So definitely kind of an interesting change, but it worked regardless, and a lot of fun play features there. But not something that was continued on to the rest of the Star Wars movies, right? Like we didn't really get a lot of Star Wars Technic after this. But this was too when
didn't get a lot of like Technic crossover. Really Technic just kind of filled a niche, and that was it. Still to this day.
And I think that makes sense for Technic, right? Like Technic really shines when we're talking about these big models, not necessarily some of the system stuff that I think they were trying to emulate back in the day.
And Technic was their first adult centered. I mean, it was supposed to
Yeah,
be the more difficult Lego sets, right?
they do kind of scream like Erector sets or like Connects,
Yeah.
and kind of more of a competition there than the way that Lego system was sort of
Yeah.
invented, created. So, but let's talk about some real big standouts here, right? So minifigure wise, we talked about the yellow faces already. This was one of the first introductions of the lightsaber piece, the hilt and the lightsaber blade, which have been around now for, I mean, a long, long time. Darth Maul still uses the small one. I know Monkey Kid introduced the larger lightsaber hilt. It'd be interesting to see if Darth Maul uses the larger one in this upcoming set.
It doesn't,
But
as according to the box art, it doesn't look like it, which is like blasphemy in my opinion, but whatever.
I kind of feel like at this point he probably could.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the other big thing that I think is we just have to mention is the staying power of the battle droid, right? How that figure has been consistent. The big change they made was they removed two of the sideways arms and created a straight sort of 90-degree turned arm so that the battle droid could hold a gun up and down versus like on the side like
Yeah.
the original ones did.
But they didn't,
And
it's only
which
one arm that has that. The other arm's still the traditional straight one.
so the staying power of that set, that piece, those pieces has just been really cool to see.
The battle droid has not been updated since 1999 because it was that good when it came out.
I know there's been some people kind of mentioning, and I think there's been some battle droids made on secondary markets with better hinging and stuff like that. But like for what they are, they're pretty perfect. And I don't really know if we need to engage in more hinging areas on the bodies and stuff like that. Like to get more realistic poses, like they're battle droids, they just need to be standing up straight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So any minifigures for you that really stand out? I know there is sort of the minifigure in this series that stands out, but any to you that really stand out?
I mean, it might be that what I'm about to say is the Queen Amidala is like
Okay.
the
Yeah.
minifigure with just the, her royal robes as like, the minifigure leg is the robe piece and it's a big kind of circular piece. I think that's for the most part the chase figure from episode 1 is that
I
is
know I'm putting you on the spot. Do you have a figure of how much it costs right now
180, 190, 200-ish
for just the figure?
for just the figure. Yeah.
Excuse me. Which, for reference, the set new costs about $355 right now. So,
Yeah, because the
yeah,
Qui-Gon Jinn and I believe it's a Jar Jar and then the Obi-Wan from that set aren't worth that much at all. I mean, they're worth maybe $10 compared to the Queen Amidala that is the chase minifigure of the entire episode 1 wave. That and like Watto is always the chase minifigure.
yeah,
Especially the original Watto where he's just kind of that blue. They don't really make that blue anymore, that kind of medium blue, where it's
that
just
was,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
It
it's
just looked like
kind of
like a turd.
frightening. Yeah, yeah. Just got that one piece.
This
That would be
Bulba
another
one
chase
too
minifigure.
was really scary.
Yeah.
The original Bulba that kind of just looks like a little like ant.
Oh, what's his name? Give me a second here. I gotta find. There's that piece that like, I believe it like gets. I'm surprised it's not more rare because it gets thrown out a lot. Um,
Was it
it's
one of the quadrant characters?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think it's in most Espa Padres.
Just looked like a big fish.
Yeah, it's the Gasgano is ridiculous. I'm gonna overlay an image of Gasgano, um, because this is the most ridiculous minifigure I think you'll ever see in your life. Because he's got like one of those old like drill pieces, and then just like 4 battle droid legs attached to it, and then just a head on the top with some goggles. And it's
It looks like something Sid would have created from the original Toy Story.
It looks like, I don't know. It looks like somebody had a bad time one night and just was like, "This is what he came up with." But like this original Sebulba doesn't look anything
Yeah,
like like a Lego figure for that matter. So I think
not at
that one
all.
like traditionally got thrown out a lot. And then I think there's the pod racing bucket came with the Aldar Beto.
Yeah, that one. That's the one that's like really good looking.
which which gives God has got I'll overlay an image of that one, that one too. Gives God's God
Yeah,
a run. It's just a battle droid like laying down so that his hands are used as feet, and then he's got regular battle droid feet too. So it's just like it's like a battle droid in like a dog pose, and then instead of a head coming out of like the traditional battle droid head, it's got another arm coming out of that. So he's got three arms, and then they used a
going
45-degree slope, and then they put a head on that.
Was that from the pod racing bucket?
Yeah,
No, that was from the Mos Espa set.
no pod racing bucket.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that interesting. Man, what a fun, what a great time to be a Star Wars fan.
Oh,
So let's kind of I do want to kind of put a wrap on this conversation for the theme. Um, what sets are missing, Grinch? What if you could add something to this catalog of sets? What would be the set? I know you had mentioned kind of more play sets and environment builds. What else? Anything else that stands out to you?
I think yeah, the biggest thing would be some play sets. Like, could you just like the Tantive 4 hallway, but like a Theed hallway, right? And you could have a
Yeah,
couple battle droids fighting some, Naboo fighters. You could do something with Coruscant. You could do maybe a little, like let's do a Mos Eisley, not cantina, but like Anakin's house, right? Or like a trade area where you got, you know, the cringy scene of Jar Jar stepping in the animal poop. But you don't have to include that. But I mean, like it would just be a really lively scene to have all that other stuff going on in the
yeah,
background, right? The biggest one for me, though, is the Trade Federation battleship. It's like
yeah.
it is due time to come out with a MIDI scale or a UCS style
Didn't they come
Trade
out with
Federation battle station. Didn't they? What?
didn't, didn't they come out with a small one?
I don't think so. I mean, they have in like advent calendars as like a micro build,
Yeah,
but they've never come out with like a true, battle station set.
the droid control ships. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the one that I highlighted was the Royal Yacht. I
Hmm.
think of in episode 1 and 2 and 3, really, those silver Naboo starships were really cool looking. They really stood out for Star Wars. I know there was a lot of like connections to hot rodding and those kind of themes that George Lucas pulled from, and I feel like it's sort of a missed opportunity for a smaller play scale like set for that. I really like the one in episode 2 that had the 4 engines on it that got like blown up right in the beginning, but I do think there's plenty of opportunity there for some sort of Naboo starship. You know
My
what I mean?
guess is because they don't chrome Lego anymore, and like
Yeah,
I am here and there on that whole discussion, the whole debate. Like it would be cool if they did it. I get why they don't do it, but if
yeah.
they came out with a gray, Naboo Royal Yacht, that would be bad. I mean, that would just be historically bad. Like like that ship is iconic because it's chromed.
I do think drum lacquered silver would look good.
It
I think
it would look
I think
okay. I think people would still be disappointed though.
yeah. Well, they can get over it.
Well,
I,
true, but I
the
think that's why
chrome.
Lego hasn't done it.
Yeah, I think that Lego stopped with the chrome because I think it would chip,
Yes.
and from a I mean, all across the board, it's never great if this chemical thing that you've introduced into a household is chipping off pieces of it. And then from a quality control perspective, that's just not what Lego wants. And so I totally understand why they probably ended up stopping that. And so As much as I know people love Chrome Lego, it totally makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I
So
think
I have.
too you can find
Oh,
that's
sorry.
why you can find the Naboo Starfighter for so cheap, the
Hmm.
UCS one, because either it doesn't have the chrome pieces or because the chrome pieces are just in disgusting
Which
shape.
also probably explains why it's so expensive
Right,
too in the box.
right.
Um, which I do have. I picked it up from somebody else, the latest Naboo Starfighter, and I have to say it has aged well. They have continued to keep that set looking really
Hmm.
great, and it was fun to build. I Of all of the sets, the movie doesn't do it justice. It is a cool looking ship, and I think it does translate really well into Lego.
Yeah.
With that being said, I kind of answered the question for myself, but I have three kind of shotgun questions for you, and then I want us to kind of work on finishing this thing up. But what did the theme do well? What should be re-released? And what should be revisited in terms of like it needs to get revisited, if that makes sense. So I guess the two and three are sort of a similar question, but Grinch, what are your thoughts here?
What did the theme do well? Um, it's hard to say because I feel like this theme has been underrepresented in the Star Wars verse. I think
That's
one
fair.
thing that definitely needs to be revisited in general for the prequels, so you might hear this again when we talk about episode 2 and episode 3, is I think they really need to revisit doing UCS sets for this era. I mean,
Okay.
do we want a fourth X-Wing UCS? Or do we want a, you know, droid Trade Federation battle station, a one-time deal, right? I think historically there's just only been a handful of UCS sets from the prequels, and I think that's something that needs to be revisited. What should be re-released? I think they could do, so revisited to me is different than re-released, as in like re-released has to be something they've already come out with. Revisited is something that like they can revisit as a theme within this theme, right? So that's the UCS stuff where they haven't really done much there. They've done one or two things, so they should revisit that. What should be re-released, I think, is again more pod racing stuff. um, I think more Gungan stuff, the
Yeah.
stuff that I think historically turned people away from this movie is now been more accepted within the Star Wars community. Again, I was really surprised about the feedback on the pod racer leak, on um, the vignette of Mos Espas, or what, Boonta Eve, right?
Yeah.
Pod racing. I think that should be revisited, and I think Gungan stuff should be revisited too, because like having just the Gungan city, would be kind of cool as well. And what did this theme do well? I don't know. I don't think it did anything well, to be honest, with what we've gotten. Um, I think it's done well to adapt and kind of lean into the areas that fans have enjoyed. I
Hmm.
think it could do that a little bit more. I just think there's so much potential here. Of like, even I'm thinking about sets to be re-released. I'm like, yeah, give us another Royal Flash Speeder from Naboo, right? Like, give us more of. There's so many. They've done a good job of getting the key minifigures, right? Like Captain Panaka, Queen
Yeah.
Amidala. But like, what's missing is their appropriate set with those minifigures. Like the Queen Amidala came in the Gungan subset. Why?
Hmm.
Like, give us a new Naboo Theed palace, right? Give us that set and give us that minifigure. Don't put it in a Gungan sub. Glad we got the minifigure. I think they've done a good job getting all those minifigures. I think they're still missing some key ones. For
Yeah.
example, the Trade Federation. I forget what their names are, but those
Newt.
figures. Yeah, Newt Gun. I think they've had a Newt Gunray, but they haven't had the kind of other,
Yeah.
Trade Federation minifigures. Maybe they have, but that's definitely an area that's been kind of underpenetrated too.
I think the AAT, the original one, was the best that they've ever come out with across all of the eras,
Mm-hmm.
the clone ones. I think getting a AAT that's more that sized definitely needs revisiting. Always thought that was a cool looking set. And then I do think a new MTT. I think that scene where they open up and all the battle droids come out
Iconic.
was it was iconic, and I know I said we weren't going to pan the movie too much, but like of all the parts in the movie, that's the one where you're like, oh crap, these guys mean business. Now they very promptly followed it up with Jar Jar Binks,
Ooh, 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 big booba.
and so like it definitely quickly lost.
What do you mean?
I think, anyways, that's another discussion about the movie itself and not necessarily the sets, but like I think those MTTs were just super cool looking. And so I think that would be a wonderful set to revisit. I know they have revisited it a couple of times, but we're definitely due for a new one. It's the last one was done in
2015, I think, right?
2014, so we're definitely a whole decade later. Which, interestingly enough, I think the previous '07 one looks better than the 2015 one, in my opinion. But that's neither here nor there.
I think that's a lot of people's opinion too, because the '07 one was the one that came out with 21 battle droids.
Yeah,
and this
yeah,
one came out with a lot, but not 21.
It's definitely a smaller set. It looks like
Right.
in comparison. So, yeah, I think I'm just looking at the pieces on the MTTs, and yeah, it like I said,
954.
yeah, and 1300.
Yeah.
So yeah, the older
But
one
like
definitely.
even the 2007 one had the tray that came out
The full
with the
rack, yeah.
stack. Yeah, the whole racking system that came out, and then vroom, vroom, whereas this other one literally just had a little like plate that you pulled out with like 4 of them standing on it.
Yeah, it left a little to be desired. But so Grinch, we're wrapping up here on the discussion. Any final thoughts before we go into what we're building this week?
No, just wanted to reiterate the point that I was kind of making earlier of I think that they should revisit this. I think, you noticed like pretty distinctively where 2007 they came out with kind of a refresh wave.
Yeah.
2015/14 they came out with a refresh wave.
Okay.
And then since then it's just really been, nothing, right? And if you follow that, every 7 years, right? There was, we'll call it 2000 to simplify it. 2000, 2007, that's 7 years. 2007 to 2015, that's 8 years. They're due for a refresh wave here if they're following that same pattern. And I think they absolutely should. Give a full wave. Give 10 sets. Not one set, not 3. Give 10.
Now that the prequels are getting more love too, I think there's a lot of people who are kind of prequel apologists, but I think the theme itself is definitely getting a little bit more love with the way the sequels have come out and how well they've worked. And I think a lot of adult Star Wars fans who would hate on the prequels are now like, well, now there's something even worse to hate on. And so, and then they're like, well, the prequels actually aren't that bad. And you're like, well, they're still bad. They're just better than the sequels.
They're just not that bad.
Yeah. So, anyways, it's interesting, but I do think there's a lot of nostalgia that could get tapped into there. So that's all I had for this wave. It's been fun to chat on and kind of revisit Lego history. But let's get into our next segment.
What are we building?
Grinch, what are you building this week?
Ooh, so I have been building, and I'm looking over there because it's 2/3 of the way complete, the Grand Emporium.
Okay, nice.
So I love it's funny kind of as I've been building these old modulars. I also just ordered the brick bank, so that's on its way. Excited for that one.
When did you get that one new?
No, I got it on Lego Market Trade.
Okay.
Got a really screaming deal on it used.
Together, parted it out, and I don't know if I would do it again. Interesting enough, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, we can talk. We need to do an episode on Bricklink. Maybe I'll lead that one because I have a ton of experience on. I was a Bricklink seller at one point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it depends on the set. If the pieces are very common, it's easy. The problem with parting out, or you're talking about the opposite. You're talking about like you took it apart.
No, I was gonna say I don't know if in hindsight I would have spent the time and money on the brick bank.
Got it.
So, but not. Yeah, we can talk more about that later.
Are you giving me it? Is that what you're saying? No. No, so I'm building the Grand Emporium,
Yeah.
and it's funny that sometimes people will comment on newer modulars, specifically the lacking of details on the interior. And when I'm
Oh,
building these old ones, it's like, I mean, this is supposed to be this grand shop, and it's literally
mhm.
like one table with stuff on it, another table with like a couple of bricks on it, and then like a cash register. And then literally, this is in the set as a changing room on the right for clothes. So there's like a guy that's trying on a pair of pants, and they use capes for the curtains, but there's only two pairs of pants available in the store for purchase, and they're both short legs. So I'm like, where did this guy
The
even get these pants from?
Yeah, they definitely designed them with the intent that you would add more to them,
Well,
and
and
so
that's
that
why they were priced so well too. Historically,
yeah,
and still even to today. Like, this set was $120, but huge because it's
I
just the
think
facade.
it would be a shame not to and add to it. But I know there's some purists who would say no. So
I don't know what's wrong
I
with
think
you.
you can do it
You're
fine
not
with
my
like
brother.
but yeah, I have a I'm going to be very brief with this one. I actually have not been building anything this week, which is sad. I did get most of the Lego packed to the point now where I'm really just sitting on the UCS Millennium Falcon and the Friends set, and really just um, Monica and Rachel's apartment. Hey, Clementine, cut it out. Monica and Rachel's apartment that I have to pack up, but everything else is going to get uh, pieced out and put away and sorted into my Acro Mills containers. Um, so I haven't been building much this week, unfortunately, but that's okay. It'll just make the next build a lot more fun.
Brick mail.
So, but Grinch, let's end it with our brick mail segment. We did get some brick mail this last week, so what do we got?
All right. So this is from Eric D. Tomaso. Emailed us in.
Mhm.
You can email us in at afolswelcome@gmail.com. He said, guys, great podcast. I appreciate the adult commentary as well as the approach. It's also nice to hear educated people discussing Lego. Thank you. That was very nice. Um, Sometimes I don't feel educated, but that's okay. I think that's half of America. Anyways, the only criticism I really have is that the word anecdotal is used too many times, or just so many times. It sounds like you guys just discovered the word and you were intentionally using it because it sounded educated. Again, we are educated. I am also curious to the point of re-listening to the whole podcast just to count how many times anecdotal is used. A very small and pretty petty probably petty criticism, but it does impact the listening experience. Just in the short time of composing this email, I have heard the anecdotal used twice. Anyways, great job on the content with great appreciation, Eric D. Tomaso. Well, first of all, thank you, Eric. Appreciate the feedback. Second of all, I believe until I have some solid evidence of the number of times anecdotal was used in that podcast and the number of times anecdotal has been used on average in other episodes, I think that's your own anecdotal opinion. So we know until we have something concrete here. No, I'm just kidding. I responded to you, Eric. I'm sure you've read that, and believe it or not, West and I also listen to every single minute of these hour and a half long episodes sometimes. And I was listening to it in the car with my wife, and I joked with her. I was like, "Oh my gosh, we literally say the word anecdotal like 30 times." And I was thinking on the YouTube video of putting an anecdotal counter in the corner just so anybody who was paying attention and watching could appreciate. Um, but then I decided not to because I didn't want to draw too much attention to it. Famously, when I've edited videos in the past, if I've noticed something, I'm like, okay, don't draw additional attention to it, and maybe nobody will notice. But Eric, we couldn't get one past you, so good call out. But I don't think, aside from this comment right now, anecdotal has been used too much since that. So
No, it definitely was more in context with the episode, but it is a fair point. I'm sure there's been some uhs and ums that we've slipped in. I certainly am trying.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Fair. Trying to be aware of it, but I think we both appreciate the feedback, and we love that you're listening, and we hope that the rest of the episodes have kind of maintained that level of discussion that brought you to us in the first place. So thank you so much for writing in.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And I think too, those were the main points we were trying to make with each episode, was the use of the word anecdotal. No. Was having a adult kind of commentary, as well as a educated discussion around Lego. Despite any education level, the goal was just to have kind of an elevated conversation around, specific topics within Lego, theme reviews, different conversations that the community's having, stuff like value, or is Lego getting more expensive, etc. So I'm glad that was the main focus in the first couple of things that you said in your message here, because that's really our goal.
And I want to comment, I know we've mentioned a few times that we have adult conversations. This isn't to say that like there's, anything that we're saying is necessarily profane or obscene or, inappropriate, if you will, in a non-suitable for work kind of context. This is really just meant to be more of, first episode was about the value of Lego, right? Like this isn't a conversation that you're going to have on YouTube about some of these themes. I hope we've continued to sort of push that boundary. Certainly there's been a few slip-ups on both Grinch's and my part with maybe
profanity.
Words that you would use in front of your grandmother, but we are trying to keep things above board here in our conversations, and we'll make jokes, we'll laugh. It's not an overly serious podcast, but at the same time too, it is what it is. So, but we just, the whole reason this all came about was that Grinch and I were having these conversations with ourselves, and we were like, this is interesting, and why don't we record this? So that's why we continue to do this and have these conversations. So it's fun for us, and
we
hopefully
also continue to do it for listeners like Eric, and appreciate the feedback and the positive vibes coming from you. So
yeah, absolutely.
I was laughing because I've been wanting to put like an adult focused conversation on Lego on our thumbnails and stuff, for like adults only, and I'm like, that could come across like, that could backfire real quick of like, should Lego come out with another Slave Leia minifigure? Like, ooh, we could have that conversation, but I don't want to call it adults only. And then, I can already picture the thumbnail in my head of like adults only, and then it's got like that minifigure, and you're like, that's not the vibe we're trying to portray here. Yeah. We might get a little Unchained, but this is not an Unchained podcast.
Oh, yes. So, and that is a wrap of another episode of AFOLs Welcome. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you are listening to the show. If you would like to write the podcast, please email us at afolswelcome@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at AFOLs Welcome. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.